Do you feel a shiver up your spine from fear? Yes, it's another story from the Nightshade diary. You know what that means. Check under the bed and make sure no one or nothing is there. Is the closet door securely shut? Then leave your disbelief behind. Amp up your imagination and hang on tight for another ride into terror and mystery. And like all good horror stories, just imagine it's a dark and stormy night. And remember, screaming like a little girl is permitted. Howler by Joe Bannister. It didn't look like a haunted house. It looked like a 1950s seaside bungalow with bow windows and pebble dash walls. Before the garden ran right, it would have been indistinguishable from all the other seaside bungalows in the area. Prim, square, gazing out over the channel with an air of cozy smugness. But something happened at Mount Repose, which, having no echo at Sanssouci up the lane, or Dunroamin on the corner, lifted it forever out of the seaside bungalow main sequence. For seaside bungalows, like stars, have their natural paths and lifespan. The only difference is that stars grow to greatness while bungalows are at their brightest soon after construction and slip slowly down the scale of magnitude until they become weekend cottages for art teachers from Birmingham, the seaside bungalow's equivalent of white dwarfdom. What happened at Mont Repose was in truth a common enough little tragedy. A man discovered that his wife loved someone else. His reaction was swift and extreme. When it was learned that Arthur Smith had murdered his wife Amanda, dismembered her, buried her in a series of small holes along the garden perimeter, and planted a fast-growing cypress hedge on top of her, a quiver of delicious shock ran through the bungalow community, coupled with relief that they had not, after all, asked him to be chairman of the Residents' Association. He might have got away with it, except for the dog. Everyone in Channel Vista knew about Amanda. Arthur may have been the last person on the South Coast to learn about her and Reginald Spink, and when he put it about that she had left him there was much pensive nodding, exchanging of significant glances and offers of tea. But the dog kept digging up the cypresses. There was divided opinion afterward as to whether it was looking for Amanda, accusing her murderer, or just digging for bones. Whatever its persistence seemed finally to drive Arthur mad, when he pursued it at a dead run down Channel Vista one Sunday morning, swinging a shovel and shouting, "I can dig another hole for you, you bastard!" Suspicions were aroused. The police talked to Arthur, dug in the garden, and took away what they found in plastic bags. They took Arthur as well. But there was no trial. Arthur Smith hanged himself from the bars of his remand cell, using the dog's lead, which had somehow secreted about his person. That should have been the end of the matter. There was a brief flurry of publicity in the newspapers. Then a member of the government was caught in a bed he should not have been in, and Mon Repose dropped out of the news as if it had never been. The bungalow was sold to a retired grocer and his wife. After one summer, they put it on the market again, saying they missed the city. The music teacher, who came next, found it too remote for his pupils, and the cat fancier said her cats didn't like it. For a few years, it was rented out on weekly lets for the season. Then even the small demand dried up. For a decade, the bungalow stood empty, and the cypresses grew tall around it, hiding it from the road. Miss Coghlan came upon Channel Vista while on a cycling holiday, discovered Mont Repose, fell in love with it, and bought it all in the course of one week in April. Miss Frank, who taught with her companion at Four Winds Junior School near Slough, thought Miss Coghlan had taken leave of her senses. "But, my dear, look at the state of it. It'll be years before you can move it." "Nonsense," Miss Coghlan said briskly. No one had ever told her that adults don't usually address each other quite so dismissively. Of course, children don't like it either, but they can't do much about it. Adults avoid people who are rude to them, which is why many teachers' only friends are other teachers. It's Easter now. I'll get men in right away to do any structural work. They should be through before we break up for the summer. Then I'll give up my flat and move in here. I'll put in my notice when we get back. Work till July, then hang up my mortarboard. Then have all the time in the world to decorate and do the garden." Miss Frank was almost lost for words. "But it's so sudden." "It's nothing of the sort. I've been thinking of retiring for a couple of years. If I don't jump soon, I'll be pushed. A project to sink my teeth into is just the incentive I need. But Joan, wailed Miss Frank, almost in tears, to give up your job and your flat and move away from the area you know and your friends, it's so. The word she was looking for was rash, or possibly foolhardy, but Joan Coughlin let a great beam spread across her strong face, sandwiched between the short iron gray hair and the several chins, and nodded enthusiastically. Isn't it? She agreed. Absolutely splendid. In the event, there was little structural work to be done. Seaside bungalows were built well in the 1950s, and Mont Repos remained basically sound despite the years of neglect, which was just as well because Miss Coughlin had unexpected difficulties getting men to work there. The local contractor said he had work coming out of his ears and couldn't touch Mont Repos before September. She informed him that there's no such word as can't. Mr. Stone explained that his workmen were already promised to other clients, and Miss Coughlin suggested that's there's a will, there's a way. He lost patience then, told her she could go complain to his mother if she wanted, but he still couldn't do anything for her until September. Cycling back to the guest house where she and Miss Frank were staying, she pondered, not for the first time, on how unhelpful grown-ups were. Just before she had to return to Slough for the new term, Miss Colin found a contractor 5 miles down the coast who could start the repairs immediately. When the solicitor gave her the key to Mont Repos, she passed it on to Mr. Wiggins. It did not at the time occur to her to wonder why Mr. Wiggins had so much less work on his books than Mr. Stone. But later she concluded it was because Mr. Wiggins was incompetent and his staff were work-shy layabouts. Every time she phoned to check on progress, there was none. She accepted the first excuse he gave, that flu had been playing havoc with his schedule. She did not query the second, that the men had down tools to search for a child lost in the downs. But when he tried to tell her that he had 3 men off work attending the funerals of elderly female relatives, she told him tersely that he would attend her at Mont Repos at noon on Saturday to show her what had been done and explain the continuing delays. Mr. Wiggins was waiting when she arrived, an uneasy figure in dungarees and a flat hat framed by the towering cypresses. The tour of inspection did not take long. Very little work had been done in the weeks since Miss Colin gave him the keys. A path had been cleared through the jungle to the front door. A broken window had been removed, and a plywood square tacked in its place. 2 men could have done it in one not very energetic afternoon. The rotten window frame, the rewiring, and the plastering were untouched, and the lease of Miss Colin's flat ran out in 3 weeks' time. Mr. Wiggins, I don't know what to say. She had been a teacher for 40 years, had never been lost for words before. My bags are packed. We agreed I could move in at the end of the month. Mr. Wiggins squirmed. We've had problems. You told me. Flu, missing children, a surfeit of funerals. He had the grace to blush. Not that. The men. Yes? Don't like. Don't like what? He finally got out. They don't like being here, Miss Colin. They say it's weird. Spooky because of what happened here. Miss Colin's eyebrows climbed like a couple of gray squirrels. What did happen here? So he told her. She didn't know whether to laugh or smack his wrist. Mr. Wiggins, you mean to tell me that a gang of brawny builders are scared to work in a seaside bungalow in broad daylight because of something that happened 20 years ago? They say there's something here, he muttered. Something? A presence. A presence, she scoffed. What? Amanda Smith hopping through the living room with her left leg tucked under her right armpit? Mr. Wiggins was embarrassed, but Doc, they say they've heard things. Heavy breathing, groans. They've probably been listening to one another. You ask in the village, she retorted, stung by her attitude. They know. They know how many people have come here and couldn't get away quick enough. Ask them about the Howler. They know. Howler? He wished he hadn't said it. His eyes dropped from hers and settled on his reinforced toe caps. Well, none of my lads has heard it. You wouldn't catch 'em here after dark, which is when it howls. But them as have heard it say it sounds like a soul in torment. They say it's enough to turn your hair white. He looked at her again, apologetic but determined. Miss Colin, I'm sorry, but you'll have to find someone else to do your work. We can't finish. I know we're letting you down. I won't charge you for what we've done already. But I'd be lying to you if I said my lads would set foot here again. He would not be argued with, but left her standing alone outside her bungalow, astonished and alarmed. Not by the Howler, but by the difficulties of renovating Mont Repose, when builders' laborers were afraid to work there. In despair, she returned to Mr. Stone. She rather wished that she had not told him, when they parted, that the devil finds work for idle hands. But if he remembered, he did not refer to it. He was a younger man than Mr. Wiggins. She hoped that might incline him to be less impressionable. He received her courteously enough, but held out no false hopes. I can't improve on September. In fact, it'll likely be October now. She had already considered her options. She could camp in the bungalow as it stood, waiting meekly for him to come and hoping that word of her dealings with Mr. Wiggins would not reach him. Or she could put her cards on the table. Miss Colin had many faults, but cowardice was not one of them. She told him that Mr. Wiggins had been to Mont Repose and why he had left. Her steely gaze challenged him to make the same excuse. Instead, a slow smile broke across his rather craggy face, weathered like the materials he worked with. You're kidding. Miss Colin did not approve of slang. She said sternly, No, Mr. Stone, I am not joking. That was the reason Mr. Wiggins gave for withdrawing his services. It's only fair to give you the opportunity to do the same. I should not wish to be responsible for an outbreak of the screaming habdabs among your employees. Matthew Stone had left school at 16 mainly because of teachers like Miss Colin, and learned the building trade at the elbows of successive bricklayers, carpenters, plasterers, and electricians. He was competent in every branch of house repair. At the age of 27, he took a night school course in bookkeeping, then he rented a yard and hung up a sign with his name on it. 5 years on the employed bricklayers, carpenters, plasterers, and electricians, so his own input was mainly managerial. It was probably inevitable, but it didn't altogether please him. He liked to feel mortar under his fingernails. He regarded the teacher levelly. Listen, Miss Colin, what I told you was the honest truth. I can't give you men without taking them away from people who've been waiting longer than you have, and more patiently. But nobody's waiting for me. If it's any use, I'll come up to the Channel Vista with you and see if we can work something out. Relief swept over her. Good boy, she beamed, making him wince. He would never know how close he came to having his head patted as well. He put Miss Colin's bicycle in the back of his pickup. When he parked in Channel Vista, they sat a moment, looking at Mont Repose through the new gap in the vegetation. Doesn't look like a haunted house, said Matt Stone. Did you know about the Smiths? Oh yes, they were celebrities around here. Small communities like nothing better than a good grisly murder. And when the grocer left, there was talk of unquiet spirits and stuff. I was at school then. A few of us sneaked up here to keep watch, but either we were too rowdy for even an unquiet spirit or there was nothing to see. I haven't heard mention of it for years. I didn't know anyone still took it seriously. Perhaps only Mr. Wiggins' workmen do. Perhaps it really was only an excuse to get out of doing the work. Let's go inside. Mont Repose was a box divided down the middle by the hall. On the right were the living room, the bathroom, and the kitchen. On the left were the main bedroom, the second bedroom, and a box room. Above the front door there was a stained glass fanlight. The fireplace in the living room was framed in imitation Dutch tiles. It wasn't a ground house. Some of Miss Colin's university-educated colleagues would have said it was a rather common, vulgar little house. But she liked it, despite all the trouble. Perhaps because it was rather like her, full bosom, down to earth, practical rather than aesthetic, enduring. It didn't feel like a house that would allow an unquiet spirit to take advantage of it. Which of them is it supposed to be? She found herself whispering and deliberately spoke up. Amanda or Arthur? Stone shrugged. Amanda, I suppose. She's the one who died here. But Arthur killed himself. It could be him. Stone grinned at her. Miss Coghlan, surely you don't believe there's a ghost at Mont Repose? She frowned. Of course not, Mr. Stone. I was merely asking since as a local man I presumed you would know which of the unfortunate Smiths was held responsible for the phenomena known as the Howler. The way she spoke threatened to reduce him to hysterics. He cleared his throat. I'll take a look around. See what needs doing first. After he closed the door, Miss Colin thought she heard laughter. She stayed in the living room. It was a tip now, but in a few weeks or months, she'd turn it into the kind of home she'd always wanted. The china cabinet would go there, the floral chintz there, and she would look out from her bow window across a dozen downland acres to the pewter glitter of the channel. And she thought she would have a pet. The lease of her flat had made it impossible, and anyway, she didn't approve of leaving animals alone all day. But now she could have a cat. Better still, a dog. That she could walk along the edge of the cliffs when the wind beat in from France. At first, when she heard the noise, she assumed Matt Stone was playing silly devils. The little boys in her class were inveterate trick players, and nothing she had seen of men persuaded her that they matured much as they grew older. She presumed he was breathing heavily at her through the crack of the door, and that his reason for doing so was that he thought it was witty. She breathed rather heavily herself and said, "Mr. Stone, have you nothing better to do?" "Then what?" He was in the front garden and turned at her voice, leaning his elbows on the window sill. The front door was only a few steps away, the garden a few steps beyond that. But still, nonplussed, Miss Colin shook her head. "Oh, nothing." He came back inside, joined her in the living room. He poked at the window frame with the blunt spike. "That'll have to go. What do you want instead, wood or aluminum?" While he was looking at her and her lips were pursed to say wood, they both felt it. A quiver in the air, a shock of cold traveling between them, as if Mon Repose had had a close encounter with an iceberg. That was all. Only from the surprise in Miss Colin's face did Stone know that he hadn't imagined it. "What the hell?" She didn't approve of swearing either. "How odd," she murmured pointedly. Stone shrugged off the chill that had stroked him under his shirt. Okay. So that's the first thing to do. Get a decent window in to keep out the draughts." Miss Coghlan said faintly, "Mr. Stone." He followed her eyes to the corner of the room. 10 years of dirt and flaking wallpaper had gathered there, and on top, as if set there by a Japanese flower arranger, was a bone. "Mr. Stone, you don't think—" He barked. A hoarse laugh. "No way. The police took her away, didn't they, in plastic bags? This house has been empty for years. I expect the fox found its way in." The idea appealed to her. Foxes made some very odd sounds, mostly after dark. Perhaps the Howler was only a vixen which had set up home in Mon Repose. Yes, yes, of course, she murmured, feeling foolish. A fox. But he could see it was disturbing her. So Stone bent to move the bone. "Christ!" He straightened up abruptly, snatching his hand back, alarm in his eyes and a cold sweat breaking on his skin. Forming on top of his hand was a pattern of 4 red dots that grew quickly to black bruises. Stone and Miss Colin stared at it together. Then the sensations began in earnest. A cold touch behind the knees of Miss Coghlan's stocking. A dampness trailed across the back of Stone's hand. The air in the room moved slightly as if something were passing unseen between them. And a feeling of deep, unsupportable sorrow clutched each of them by the heart. Sorrow and grief and incomprehension. And guilt. The guilt welled like a fountain through all the other sensations, vast and bottomless, mind-sapping, soul-crushing, intolerable. A little moan that was more pity than fear crept from Stone's lips, and then it was gone. Miss Coghlan staggered, as if a great weight she was holding was suddenly removed. White-faced, her eyes stretched with shock, they stared around the room, but nothing had changed. They were alone in every sense of the word. The bone atop its mound of rubbish had not moved. By wordless agreement, they moved outside. Dry twigs snapped under their feet as they passed through the hall. The breeze on the cliffs restored a little of Miss Coghlan's color. "Well, Mr. Stone," she managed at length, "you wanted to see my haunted house. Is there anything you want to go back in and see again?" He gave her a gruff chuckle. She might be rude, overbearing, and self-important, but her nerve was steadier than his. "What are you going to do?" "Do?" she echoed. "I thought we agreed. First the window frame, then—" "You still mean to live here?" His voice cracked. "I've nowhere else to go. All my savings are in this house. I thought it was a bargain. Now I doubt if I could sell it at any price. Either I move in here in 3 weeks or I try the YWCA. If it's been Stone's choice, He'd have thought about it longer, but it wasn't. The only choice he had was staying or leaving. We could try the vicar. We? He shrugged. We have an arrangement about making your house habitable. It sure as hell isn't habitable like this. She appreciated his support, if not his language. Her eyes thanked him. I didn't feel it was inimical. Did you? He combed his memory for what inimical meant, then shook his head. It had either felt hostile nor evil, just very, very unhappy. A soul that quite literally didn't know where to put itself. Even though it had hurt and frightened him, he had not felt it meant to threaten him. All the same, you can't live with that much misery. We have to try and lay it, she suggested, a faint returning humor lifting one corner of her wide mouth. Exorcise it? Set it at peace, he countered, refusing to be baited. She smiled. You're right. Let's see the vicar. As soon as they explained the problem, the vicar warned them that he wouldn't be able to help. Attempts had been made to exorcise Mon Repose 10 years before, as a last resort before it was abandoned. An expert had been summoned, a cleric who evicted unquiet spirits with the practiced ease of a bouncer removing rowdy guests from a nightclub. But the presence at Mon Repose defeated his best efforts, slinking back as soon as he had gone on 3 separate occasions. Was he able to explain his failure? Asked Miss Coghlan. The vicar's brow creased with remembering. Not really. The thing didn't fight him. It just got out of the way while he was there and came back when he left. Like you, he thought it wasn't an evil thing. No nasty smells at the mention of the Lord's name or anything like that. It just... He shrugged. It didn't seem interested in what he had to say. As I went to leave, Miss Coghlan paused in the doorway. Which of them is it, Arthur or Amanda? The vicar shook his head sadly. We failed to establish even that. My colleague called it in the names both of the victim and the perpetrator, but it wouldn't answer. He recalled another detail. It tried to bar his way with sticks. Wherever he went in the house, he found sticks lying in his way. He threw them away, but somehow they always found their way back. Glancing at her, Matt Stone thought he saw a glimmer of understanding in Miss Coghlan's eye. Outside, he challenged her. You've got a line on this, haven't you? Well, perhaps, she allowed. I'm not sure. There's something I can try. If I'm right, we can solve this problem. Where now? I've some shopping to do, then back to the bungalow. It'll be going dark in an hour. I know. That's when we can talk to him. Who? Stone was afraid he already knew. Miss Coghlan nodded. The Howler. The last of the day was dying out of the sky when Stone parked his pickup in front of Mon Repose. Oyster-colored streaks on the high clouds pointed westward, but no light fell on the still house, for the moon was not yet risen. A few stars, frosted with distance, watched through breaks in the clouds. When Stone turned off the engine, they could hear the wind. They could not be sure if that was all they could hear. Miss Coghlan led the way, a broad-beamed Amazon in lisle stockings. Stone followed her with a shopping bag. He flashed a torch round the dark rooms. The scene was as they had left it, the dirt, the dry twigs, the bone. The only footprints in the dust were theirs. From the bag Miss Coghlan drew out 2 cushions, one of which she passed to Stone. We may as well be comfortable. She sat down like a collapsing marquee. Oh, Mr. Stone, if it's all right with you, I think we should have the light out. What could he say? Certainly not. I'm a bundle of nerves already. If you put the light out, I may well cry. If he had any function here at all, it was to protect her. He couldn't say he was afraid of the dark. Nor was he, normally. But this wasn't a normal sort of darkness. He turned off the torch. Softly in the blackness, Miss Coghlan said, We may have quite a wait. I'm in no hurry, muttered Stone. Half an hour passed. Then an hour. Still there was no moon, no light of any kind. Miss Coghlan got a cramp. Shifting her position on the cushion on the bare boards, she made enough noise to frighten away any number of howlers. Stone wondered how long she could wait if he declined to make an appearance. Then between one moment and the next it was with them. There was nothing to see. They didn't even hear it at first, but the temperature dropped abruptly, as it had that afternoon. The air moved frantically against her cheeks, as if something had passed close by them. And Stone felt something like breath and something like a kiss on his sore hand. Miss Coghlan? Yes, Mr. Stone, she said quietly. I know. He marveled at the massive calm in her voice. He was rigid with tension. the hair standing up on his neck and his arms, his skin suddenly cool with sweat. "It's all right." Something in her tone made him think she wasn't talking only to him. Then in the darkness the sounds began, heavy breathing that rose quickly to a rapid pant, a clicking on the floorboards, a soft plaintive whine like a child crying, and through it all came pouring the grief and the terrible guilt, the timeless damnation of blame, the overarching wretchedness. Miss Coghlan had not known that such profound, excoriating misery could exist even for a moment. The idea of it persisting eternally in a single lost soul appalled her. She whispered, "Please, it's all right." But the soft whine grew first to a plangent keening, so close beside them that it set their skin crawling and their teeth on edge, and then to the howling, which had given the thing its name. The disembodied voice in the darkness soared in a crescendo of almost tangible despair, inconsolable arpeggios of remorse and regret playing over the dominant theme of grief. The sound filled the room, filled the house, battered down on the crouched listeners in a Niagara of torment. Gradually then the sounds of despair began to abate, the terrible wailing to break as if for breath. Miss Coghlan began to punctuate the gaps with her own voice, her firm but kind schoolmarm's voice, reassuring, confident, promising order. "It's all right," she said again, somehow keeping her tone low, even rhythmical. "It wasn't your fault. You're not to blame for what happened. None of it was your fault." Mummy and Daddy fell out. Mummy was a bad girl and Daddy got cross. Sometimes cross people do things they don't mean to. I know you loved them both, and they both loved you. But when Daddy was cross with you, it was more because of what he'd done than what you'd done. He was very unhappy. He blamed you for giving him away, didn't he? But you didn't mean to. It was your nature to dig in the garden. If he'd thought, he'd have known that. Anyway, he couldn't have lived with what he'd done, even if no one ever found out. He chose to die for what he did to Mummy. He'd have done the same thing at home if he hadn't been taken to prison. You couldn't have stopped him. If he hadn't used the lead, he'd have used something else. Stone, listening to the rhythmical sing-song of the teacher's voice, his flesh alive with the soft keen that the unearthly howling had sunk to, finally understood. The howler was, of course. That was why Miss Coghlan had bought what she had, which at the time had made him doubt her sanity. As if she read his mind, her broad hands moved to the shopping bag. "I've brought some things for you." Unseen in the dark, she laid them out on the floor. "There's a nice bit of steak, there's a tennis ball, and an old slipper of mine. It's not the same as one of Mummy's, I know, but you're very welcome to it. And there's this." Chain jangled in the dark. "Daddy took yours, didn't he? Never mind. You'll like this one. I thought we could bury them in the garden, so you'll know where they are, and you can come for them any time you're lonely. It's bedtime now. You haven't had much rest these last 20 years, have you? Never mind, it's all over. You're a good boy. You mustn't blame yourself for what happened any more. Go to sleep. And if you're still feeling bad tomorrow, come back and we'll talk some more. I'm going to be here from now on, and you're always welcome. I'd like to have a dog about the place." Stone dug a hole in the garden, and Miss Coghlan carefully put the contents of the bag in the bottom. She said softly, "If I knew where your body was, I could bring it here too. But I don't know where you died. I hope these will serve." "It's quieter, isn't it?" murmured Stone, feeling the difference like fading electricity. The moon had risen while he was digging. He saw Miss Coghlan smile. "Yes, I think he's at peace now." They walked back to the pickup. The channel moved below them like a sleeper under silk. "How did you know it was the dog?" "I didn't know," she said, "but I began to suspect. It didn't answer to either Arthur or Amanda, and it wasn't interested in the exorcist's homilies. The church can't have it both ways. If animals have no souls, they can't be expected to acknowledge the Lord's name. That poor dog had the whole burden of what happened here dumped on him. The master he loved murdered the mistress he loved in the house he loved. When instinct drove him to dig her up, his master tried to kill him. Then he used the dog lead to end his own life. The poor creature has spent the last 20 years not understanding why his world fell apart, but firmly believing it was his fault. Of course he howled. If you'd been wrong, if you found yourself trying to appease something evil with half a pound of steak and an old slipper, oh, I was pretty sure by then, said Miss Coghlan, growing smug now that the drama was over and everything was going to be all right. These things we felt and heard. The heavy breathing was a dog panting. The cold touch was his nose. And he bit you when you went to take his bone. Then he licked you to say sorry. And dogs howl when they're unhappy, Stone frowned. What was that clicking sound? Toenails on the floorboards. But it was the sticks that clinched it. He stared at her sticks. You remember what the vicar said, that the exorcist couldn't move for the sticks the Howler put in front of him. Then he threw them away, but they kept reappearing. She laughed, a deep ringing tone like a bell. The poor dog wanted someone to play with him. The exorcist threw the sticks away and the dog brought them back.